Okay, welcome everybody to a class on phrasal verbs. Another class on phrasal verbs. There's been quite a lot of phrasal verb lessons on this course. So I've taken this from a book called Phrasal Verbs in Use, Advanced, and it's by Michael McCarthy and Felicity O'Dell. But they're all similar expressions. I mean, we've studied many of these expressions already, but we're just doing them again to make sure that you don't forget these useful expressions. And if you want the whole course, if you're watching this on YouTube or something like that, you'll need to go either to Udemy or to my website, because I am going to start putting these courses up on my own website as well. So you'll be able to join the courses in that way too. Okay, if you run somebody over in your car, it means you hit them and go over them, or, you know, quite often it's used just for when you knock somebody down. And of course, that's still serious. But if you hit somebody when you're driving, you can say, I ran somebody over. But it does sound like you might have gone right over them as well. And I know that that doesn't always happen in an accident. Quite often they bump off the windscreen or something like that. But I think we can still use that. You can still say, yeah, he ran somebody over on the motorway the other day. But remember that very often phrasal verbs have multiple meanings, very often. And so if you if you say the meeting ran over by 20 minutes, personally I don't use this one very often like this, I don't. But I recognise it. If you say the meeting went over or ran over by 20 minutes, it means that it went on for 20 minutes longer than expected. Yeah, it went on for 20 minutes longer than it was scheduled to finish. Okay, so you've got those meanings of run over, and they're kind of metaphorical. Yeah, that's the whole point about these chapters. They're showing you that phrasal verbs are used metaphorically very often. But remember that you also, I mean, today I am running over chapters 7 and 8 of phrasal verbs in use. Yeah, I am running through chapters 7 and 8 of phrasal verbs in use. So if you go over or go through or run through a document or a topic or a theme, it means you discuss the details of that topic, of that theme, or of that document. And you're just discussing to make them clearer, to make sure everybody understands. Yeah, and so certainly every single time I'm doing a class on phrasal verbs, we go through, we go over, we run through, we run over some new phrasal verbs. Okay, so yeah, remember we use these 4 phrasal verbs like that as well. Okay, if you brush something or somebody off, this has a very literal meaning, and it means that. Yeah, I mean, maybe a fly lands on your shoulder and you brush the fly off. Yeah, and I want you to notice that when you do that, you treat that fly as just something like very small and unimportant, and, you know, get away from me. You're unimportant and go away. That's the idea. And the reason I say that is because when you brush something off or brush somebody off, it means treat that person or what they said as totally unimportant, as not worth listening to. You brush somebody off, it means that you think you don't take them seriously. You don't take what they've said seriously, and you're just trying to get rid of them because you don't think that what they said is important. So you might brush somebody off, or you might brush something off. And this is very similar to shrug something off. They're more or less the same. But shrug, you wouldn't say shrug him off, or I don't think I would. But brush, you would use people here. Brush somebody or brush something off. So you could brush off criticism, certainly. And you can shrug off criticism, certainly. And it means somebody's criticised. You'd be like, yeah, it's nothing. It's not serious. Go, you know, you treat it as unimportant to get rid of that person. So you might brush off criticism. You might brush off somebody's comments. You might brush off a person as well. You might say, he asked his boss for a rise in his salary, yeah, a pay rise, and his boss just brushed him off, and it means they didn't listen to him. He didn't want to, you know, he wanted to just get rid of him, and he didn't take his request seriously. Okay, so if your boss does that, you might want to think about leaving, about resigning. But hopefully your boss doesn't brush you off, and hopefully he listens. Okay, but shrug something off is the same as brush something off, like that, yeah? But it's criticism that you usually shrug off. But you could shrug off somebody's comments, certainly, and it means don't take them seriously. you know, you don't think that they're important, or you say that they're unimportant. You know, they're not something that you should be worried about. It's just like a little fly that you're shrugging off. You know, shrug off means this. And so there's an idea of you treat somebody or something, sorry, not somebody, something, you treat something as totally unimportant and just whatever. Okay, the price of food, energy, travel, and about 1,000,001 other things has shot up, yeah, has skyrocketed. We're in the middle of inflation, and it looks like we're going to be reaching hyperinflation pretty soon. So the price of everything has shot up. I wonder why, eh? I wonder why we suddenly got inflation. What do you think, guys? I know what I think. Okay, if you dive into the water, yeah, a dive is like that. You know, you might have diving boards that are quite high, and then you dive into the water. And dive means head first, yeah. Usually you put your arms up like that. I do that if it's from very high height. I think that helps me get into the water without hurting myself. But if you dive into a new job, it means that you start a new job with enthusiasm. Yeah, there's something enthusiastic about diving into. And when you dive into something, you enthusiastically start it. It's a metaphor, really. We're using the diving, you know, when you dive into something, you do it energetically and enthusiastically, even if it's into the water. But yeah, a new job, if you're enthusiastic about it and you start it with loads of enthusiasm, you dive into it. Now, another good one is to hit out at your critics. This means, you know, to strongly criticize somebody. And so, you know, you can strongly criticize your critics, of course. You know, they criticize you, you criticize them. And, you know, it's very often seen in newspapers, and it's very often used not for a physical hit out at, although it can be. Yeah, he hit out at his opponent, he lashed out at his opponent. That's another good one, to lash out at somebody. That's very physical, to lash out at somebody. But I suppose it could be used metaphorically as well, it could. But this hit out at is very often seen in the newspapers for when you fight back against somebody, but with words and argument, you know, rather than physically fight back. So to lash out at, to hit out at your critics. Now, if something spurs you on, it encourages you. It encourages you. It gives you the encouragement that you need to keep going. That's the idea. The spurs were actually on your shoes when you were a cowboy. Yeah, the